Misadventures of Rook and his wonderful friends, or how Bioware likes to call it, Dragon Age the Veilguard. There has been lots of drama with this game, and mostly this isn't EA's fault. Tailoring reviews, striking the MCAs, banning people completely from Dragon Age forums. A lot of hate that this game has been getting, aside from the game itself, it's from them trying so desperately to have a good public image with shady practices just to backfire and make them look worse. I remember back in the day, Cyberpunk 2077, at least with them, you had those yellow screens, with them apologizing. Yes, we hated them, but they were trying to apologize and make up for their mistake. These guys at EA, they are just pretending that nothing is wrong and that their game is a beautiful, beautiful jewel. It's also difficult to have a reliable source of information with this game because Metacritic is sitting on just abysmally low scores because people are review bombing this game. So everything about this game feels off. So if you want a genuine review, this one might be good for you. Let me give you an example of how I work and how my reviews work to see if this is something that you might be interested in. Essentially, my job, or what I like to do, is provide you a review that it is unbiased. You might be wondering, how is that possible? That's actually quite impossible. It is actually not. Let me exemplify that for you. Let's say that I am reviewing just a tree green leaf, and let's say that I do not like that green leaf. I can tell you that it is green, but I do not like it. So I can say I prefer a yellow leaf because I prefer autumn. You might like the green leaf that I'm holding, so that particular leaf that I dislike, you might like it. And if you're like me, that you prefer autumn, then you're probably not going to like the green leaf either. But there I am at the end telling you that the leaf is actually green, which it is. So that's essentially how it's going to work. Whenever I have a bias, I'm going to call it out, but I'm going to show you the product the bare naked as it is on bare bones. So let's begin with the graphics. They are just wonderful. This is, as you very well know, a high production AAA with all of the expertise that they can master, and it shows. Not only the graphics give you a remarkable, beautiful vista with highly detailed fantasy environments, but the game is extremely optimized. It's extremely well optimized. I do have a high-end PC, but I get about 150 FPS with everything maxed out, ray tracing enabled, 1440p, and so on and so forth. And even when it's just a AAA title, that's highly commendable, because take a look at Dragon's Dogma 2, Star Wars Jedi Survivor, Shadow of the Earth Tree, gets me lower 30s when I'm playing that DLC, or high 40s in some areas when ray tracing is enabled, and even without it sometimes I do have huge dips. It is really commendable that the game looks so gorgeous and runs so smoothly. I wish this could be something that would be more common in the gaming industry with game releases. Not only that, but technology is masterfully handled in here with expertise hardly seen anywhere else. The level of detail with anti-aliasing, even with lower qualities and upscaling, allow the game to hardly lose graphical detail and fidelity to allow you to squeeze those extra little cheeky FPS that you need or you want. Even in balance and performance modes, the game looks sharp and crispy. And if you feel that you need to squeeze those extra little FPSs, then there are those options right there that you're barely going to notice any significant change when it comes to the graphical fidelity that's being offered to you. But now, here I am with my bias and my opinion. I do not like the art style of the game. And this is where I think that we can start seeing Dragon Age the Veilguard as the regular fantasy game that used Dragon Age for its Halloween costume. This will be true for most, if not all, fronts that the game has to offer for you. You do not need for me to tell you that this doesn't look like dark fantasy at all. You can see it for yourself, and you see there is just nothing wrong with that. Art, which is, I believe video games to be, is oftentimes subjective and based on personal interpretation. It is also something completely valid to have an expectation on something you have as an already established something. For example, the IP for Dragon Age that we have right here. Changes are going to naturally be divisive. Dragon Age has always been dark fantasy. Even Inquisition, that was a little lighter, It was still very gruesome and mature. Now, I love Disney as much as the next guy. I am a grown-up adult man, and I really deeply enjoy both things. I grew up watching Hercules, Tarzan, Atlantis and such, and I do still love to watch that stuff. But the thing is that I do not like for that stuff to be on Dragon Age, because I, like many of us, I was expecting after 10 years of wait, we were waiting for a dark, violent and gruesome world, which, as you can see, it's not present here. When it comes to character creation, it is very thorough, it is very detailed. I do have to say that this is one of the best character creators that I have ever seen, because there are so many options. And the hair animation that you have in this game, this is hands down the single best hair animation and modeling that I have ever seen in my entire life in gaming. This is even better than the technology that they implemented on The Witcher 3 for Nvidia Hairworks. This is really good. Now, the thing is that here's my bias, here's my opinion. I do not like it, even though that it is very good. It's just that the art style doesn't suit me, and more often than not, at the end of the day, I was not trying to. I spent like about 1 to 2 hours trying to make my character, but it was not because I was enjoying making my character. I was trying to make my character not look as bad to my eyes, because remember that this is something that you are going to be looking throughout the entirety of your playthrough, so you want to make sure that your character is very good and that you're going to enjoy seeing that what you've made at the end. At the end, I did finally manage to make a character that I did like, but it was very difficult for me. Now, moving on to a different place, narrative. This is a front that also polluted Veilguard's narrative and storytelling. I do want to point out, and being objective to you, this is not bad writing. Again, bad and good are, at the end of the day, adjectives often used to render an opinion we might have. The fact is that this is not bad writing, it's just light-hearted. All throughout conversations, you will feel the characters are always portraying a story focused and driven by the argument. The real reason to play, it was the friends that we made along the way. And there's nothing wrong with that. Most of JRPGs function like that, as a matter of fact, and they are amazing. Then again, that is not the expectation that we had for a Dragon Age game. The companions are a living proof of that. Emmerich is a well-sophisticated necromancer that sees his craft with a kind heart and stands up against all ill magic practices like blood magic. Sometimes, in between character conversations, he or Nev would argue about the darks and grays of using either or, and how they would never do such a thing themselves. Remember Hawk's mother side quest in Dragon Age 2? That was brutal, dude. It made me feel anger, sad. You essentially see Hawks trying to save the only family member he has left, and she was dismembered, killed and revived by a necromancer in one of the darkest, creepiest moments in Dragon Age history. And all of the characters are just like this. Bioware was not afraid of showing the grim and true colors of characters in previous titles, that you would try to understand and help the side characters find redemption from their own inner demons. Another example in here is Lucanis, one of the most badass characters seen in trailers, the Antivan Crow assassin that I decided prior to launch that he was going to be my homie. Then you get to do some of his side quests where he takes you shopping for flowers and desserts catered based on the tastes of everyone in the lighthouse, which is the group main hub, and then takes you for a choco macchiato cappuccino, and there's this little pop-up that he remembers something that you like, something little, very small, a beverage that you like, and the game tells you he's going to remember this because he's always attentive and caring like this. That is just a sum up of every single one of the companions that you have on Veilguard. They are always like this and light-hearted. And then again, it's not bad. It's not bad at all. It's just not Dragon Age. There's also that one character that a lot of people are afraid to talk about, and I really don't. The thing is that diversity I enforce. diversity. A lot of people tend to forget that Dragon Age has always been one of the most inclusive and diverse games or franchises in history. Did we suddenly forget about Severin on Origins, or Isabella, Fenris, Anders, Ironball, Dorian? Should we continue? The thing is, the main difference here being is that yes, there has always been this diversity on its cast of characters. It's just that they were still mature characters, and their storylines was based on their demons from the past, what made them what they are, often cruel and unforgiving, and you were always there to help them seek redemption, a glimpse of light in the darkness. Often you would be embraced by their own demons while trying to help them get away from them. And the only reason why their sexuality would play a part would be on the romance section of the game, which is also a very much important thing of a game. If we're going to be a romancing a character on such game, it's also interesting to find out. For example, in my first playthrough, I didn't know that Fenris was gay, and I didn't realize until my second playthrough that he was my homie, he was my friend. I didn't realize until my second playthrough, where I was trying to romance him with my female hawk just to be shown by him because he didn't like females. But then again, I learned about that later on, and it didn't affect his questline at all. It was never on my face. So the character, the writing of the character was the priority, not his sexuality. And the sexuality was something extra that made the character extra special and extra human, but it was never the focal point. Now, Bioware is too afraid to be like that in here, and you feel puzzled by the pronouns things, then yeah, it is here. It is not always in your face like a lot of people out there like to say or trying to portray in the bigger picture of media. It's not the big pronouns game, but it is here, and if you're bothered by them, you're not going to not feel bothered by them here. There's also our main character, our main protagonist, Rook. I'm pretty sure that you have seen a lot of footage and evidence of him not being a bad character or not being mean, not allowing you to be a bad character. Why is that important? Why is that something that we love? Well, in RPGs, there's a very good reason for that. Sometimes we like to stand up against cunt characters. Like, for example, the very classical scene on The Witcher 3, which is one of the many where Geralt is just not very happy to not stand up against people that are being assholes to him. It's ever so satisfying, but that's not the only front where Rook writing feels a little bit off. Often you wouldn't get the point or idea that you're trying to convey, and you're left wondering if that's what you really wanted to say. More often than not, you want to, for example, let's say that Rook, you want to give a witty answer, a witty and fun answer. The answer that you get is just something like this.
This can't be the first time you've missed a target, right? What did you do before?
I never miss. I thought I still had this. Even with Treviso's suffering, I thought I could still focus on what mattered. I need to work.
It's just standard and regular and default piece of dialogue that didn't have anything to do with whatever they were showing you that you would say, or even with the idea or personality that you're trying to portray with your main character, so you don't actually feel invested, or you don't feel that you're building that character personality because it's already established there as a standard and default something. Now, speaking of technical nuances and narrative strength points, there was one staple that separated classics like Dragon Age or The Witcher from the bunch things that makes them special, and that's how the world is altered by choices made in the game's universe in previous titles. If I ever loved something about Inquisition, Dragon Age Inquisition was the feeling of having Alistair as a warden show up, or it could be even as crazy as it sounds, Loghain from Dragon Age Origins, a game that was just too far away from the release date of the 2014 Game of the Year title. I know that a lot of people do not like Dragon Age Inquisition, but you cannot deny how good it was that you would have those choices and make the Great Warden out of Alistair and save him, or either choose to save Hawk. The game would interconnect, the traits and personalities would be aligned with those characters, and they would show up and they would do meaningful things without actually stealing the main own stage for the main character because it was not that game. It was just nice to see them in that, doing something, in being invested in the world. On The Witcher 3, there's also a full side quest that only happens depending on your previous game's choices. That's technology pushing the boundaries of what a gaming can achieve, interconnected, interactive worlds and stories in between titles. And those are things that the other games that you have in the competition, the other games that made them outstand, Dragon Age and The Witcher, those games cannot get close to them because of how beautiful and interconnected the lore and the mythos of the world feels because of that. That is not present here. They stripped that away from the game with the excuse of a more direct storytelling. Now yes, being fair, I would say that it would be difficult to slot 3 games decisions into a 4th one. It is a challenge, but it is a challenge that kept the universe essence how it was. Why are we going backwards in technology and not forward? That is something that we could also say about combat. Now that we move into the gameplay section and all of the technicalities that the gameplay would give us, and if that's going to be fun or not, moving away from the narrative and the graphical style of the game. Let's talk about combat first. As a base, you have a very basic hack and slash with blocks, parries, dodges and skill rotation, and like everyone said, it is very reminiscent on God of War, especially noticeable when you're using sword and shield. They even replaced the classic greatswords we had on all of the previous titles with axes. It is functional, but it is very lacking, and I'll explain why. It is not uncommon to see this trend where games get mimicked all the time based on things that seem to become a little bit more popular, like Souls-likes, DMC-likes, Monster Hunter, Diablo-likes, so on and so forth. Here they chose God of War battle system, but it lacks everything that it made the God of War battle system so special. First, the feedback. To be efficient. On God of War, you not only have the colored prompts on screen, useful more than anything for enemies behind you, that it didn't really work perfectly in my opinion back then for that matter, but you also have the enemies' AI and animation working seamlessly to give you your cues where you could see their behavior and animation to predict dodges, parries, and be proficient in combat. Well, here everything is just very chaotic. Everything is exploding around you in vibrant, all over the top skills, colors, explosions, where guiding through enemy animation is nearly impossible because of that fact. You have to rely then on the color prompt feedback, and some enemies delay their attacks more than others, so you can't really rely on rhythm either to perform parries, because then again, you cannot really see who's doing what or how are they doing or when should you time your things, parries, dodges, and so on and so forth. So this boils down to dodging like a maniac, getting the occasional parry here and there, mashing away your attacks. Also, there's like things like charge heavy attacks that deal more damage to armor or range damage to barrier, but it feels useless because the game is not really that hard, and if your weapon has level enough, you can slash away anything without an issue, turning those elements into something that's there, and I personally never felt the need to exploit because there was never enough challenge for me to feel compelled to use all of those systems. Another thing that they didn't nail from the God of War battle system is the contextual feedback, which I think is one of the reasons that makes God of War combat system stand out. The viscerality, how visceral it is. You hear the crashing of bones, the flesh being rent, thrown asunder, grunts of craft pain, and the finishers are just brutal, and they are varied and often designed for specific monsters with different animation. Here, you just have one per weapon for every single type of enemy, with the occasional extra one for a couple of bosses, and that's just it. And when they hit your character, sometimes you can see him just flinching a little bit or tilting a little bit and letting a little grunt go. But it really is, there is not that really frenetic force of being aggressive and violent into the combat system. Then again, because that's something that they weren't allowed to do because of the overall vibe that the game is trying to convey and portray to you. And the combat system is also something that for some reason they decided to go backwards. You see, Dragon Age combat system was never special either, but it did have something that made it special, and that is that Dragon Age 2 and 3 had 2 different combat systems that you could seamlessly swap in between tactical and action oriented, and while individually they were nothing special, and at least they gave you the freedom of choice, and it was something very special because no other game out there has this kind of thing. choice that aligned to your playstyle a little bit better, it was something amazing. I loved being tactical and giving my commands to my characters and companions in previous titles, having the possibility to swap in between my mage, my ranger, my warrior, using different builds and crafting such builds with the RPG elements of build crafting was something amazing. While other people that didn't actually enjoy RPGs that much, they would find some kind of enjoyment as well because of how actiony the game would feel if they decided to go through the different combat system that it was available for them. Dragon Age Origin was a difficult game, for example, because you needed to have the proper skills, build and companion managing. You can go through everything that this game had to offer just by smashing away. And if you want to try something like a different playstyle, you have to start a new playthrough because your companions are just skills that you can activate and see explode from time to time. Yes, they are efficient and yes, they are out there attacking, but you barely notice them and you don't really have control over what they are doing. And that's again, in regards to builds and mechanics, I personally didn't feel that the combat would change enough on my class or that the game was challenging me to try different tools or builds. So in this regard, I think that we are going backwards again instead of moving forward. They are stripping away mechanics that would seamlessly feel okay and they would feel good to play, having different kind of builds, being able to test my mage, my warrior, my ranger in just one single playthrough and not really having to go back to a base, even being able to control them at the same time, giving them commands or maining one for that matter. On previous iterations of Dragon Age, you would be able to main a solo, a rogue, and maybe then you could later on try a warrior on the same playthrough without having to have any kind of issue. Now the level design and exploration, it is very linear. Strangely, there's fast travel points in every location that you can go to, and it basically goes in circles, the locations that you can visit. There's a lot of puzzles to go through, but they are very, very simple, and you can complete them without having to think about anything, and just basically on automatic mode. Itemization is spread on treasure chests that you can get by completing said puzzles to get access to locked doors. Whenever you get a second item you already had, it gets upgraded to a new rarity level, and that's how you get your rare, epic and legendary stuff. So that's the gist of everything. Now my bias, how do I feel about that? Strangely enough, I like it, I dig it. I have said several times that not everything needs to be an open world, and while I think that it mimics the exploration style again from God of War, and I do not think that it is as good as that, it's still a breather from open worlds, which I love, but you can just certainly get tired of them. I do not like the puzzles that much. They seem to be made for toddlers, or that they require the very minimum effort, but I do see how someone who just doesn't like puzzles can go about them here without caring too much for them. I find the itemization is interesting. It compels you to explore those beautiful levels, to rarify your gear, maybe get a new one that you can later on transmog into something else. Now transmog, that's something that I cannot praise enough in this evolution of transmog that they have in here. I always struggled to like armor designs on Dragon Age, and they were very limited, and often the ones for the battle builds, I wouldn't like how they look on my characters. Here you have a huge array of armors to transmog, so that you can choose how and what you want to look, when do you want to look like that. That is including weapons, shields, armors, and it's one of the aspects that I enjoy the most out of Veilguard, because I was always happy to explore to see if I could get a new piece of armor, and if I didn't like the stats of the armor, then I could probably at least slot it into my character to look cool, and that was true for the swords, for the shields, and for everything like that. Now, my final thoughts and the overall bias that I have after showing you objectively everything that this game has to offer is that it's just a generic fantasy game with a Halloween costume of Dragon Age. If it got attention, it was because of the name, but almost nothing here feels like a Dragon Age. It is very cinematic, and sometimes you just feel like getting home with the game and watch things explode and get some loot. Yes, this game might quench that thirst, but I don't feel that this to be a Dragon Age game, and I wouldn't recommend anyone to pay the full price at launch for it. Rather, maybe try it with the EA subscription as a mean of renting the game or waiting until the game gets a really, really huge discount. Anyways, if you like the content, a like on the video is super appreciated. No, still you today, you're a gorgeous and beautiful person. You're indeed a gorgeous and beautiful person. Subscribe to the channel, join the Discord. Have a beautiful day and goodbye.